Hello, Patreoners. Thanks for subscribing. I'm going to go over something here that's a big deal. I want to play a little clip here from a video from a couple of years ago. In my never-ending pursuit of experiencing and understanding the threshold of awareness. Let me just kind of go through what my thoughts were a couple of years ago, and then I'll make some additional comments here today. Edward here from earviewer.com. I have another video for you. I'm continuing to explore this area that I like to call the threshold barrier. Another term for it is the limen. That area in another model, you could say it's the area between conscious awareness and our subconscious, and that band, that barrier in between the two. I'm starting to look at it differently. Those words don't really do it for me anymore, so I'm looking at it differently. But what I'm attempting to do, what I wanted to attempt to do, is to bring my awareness to it. I want to attempt to fluctuate it. I want to attempt to move it, attempt to manipulate it, and see if I can do that, and what would happen if I could do that. Again, the target serves of the purpose of the stimulus that is coming from the, as Ingo terms, the second reality, moving through the nucleus, as Ingo termed it, moving through the core mental processes, making it to, hopefully, to the limen, making it to the threshold barrier. And so what I'm attempting to do is to meet that stimulus at the threshold, and I'm attempting to fluctuate the threshold if possible, to see if I can feel that force field, as I like to kind of refer to it as a force. Definitely a force field. This is September 16th, so long ago. But definitely a force field, in my opinion, electromagnetic, and more than likely spherical. So it's, in my assessment, it's a electromagnetic sphere, like here, encompassing the human brain, with probably levels to it, and on both sides. So there's probably a where the actual electromagnetic shell kind of exists here, and then there's probably degrees of layers of it going inward and outward as well. And or possibly smaller, maybe somewhere around the corpus callosum, possibly. Possibly here. It may be smaller than I'm thinking. It may be a smaller, kind of like the eye of a hurricane. It may be a smaller sphere with a larger radius of electromagnetic energy. Maybe something along those lines. And the functions, the mental functions in the brain then are firing around it, and then pieces of information or perceptions or perspectives make it inside that center sphere. That kind of feels kind of right. If I can sense my ability to manipulate it or move it, that's an experiment that I'm working on now, to attempt to do that, and so the target serves that purpose. This target. See, that's the thing about working targets. The way that I do them is that when I'm working experimentally, the target, and this is it may be difficult for some people to understand who don't who maybe not be too clear on exactly what I'm doing, because remote viewing data has become so um, profitable, I guess, or people are interested in data, and so what I'm saying here may either throw people off or just confuse them as to what I'm talking about, because the target in when I'm doing experimental stuff, it only serves one purpose, and that is to stimulate the core mental processes for me to experience when and where a core mental process, meaning some area of my brain here, is getting stimulated by the stimulus. The stimulus being the target that is somehow being accessed, and the uh, elements of that target, the elements of that, however it exists in time and space, are configuring inside of the neural nets of my brain in certain areas and formulating ideas about them, perceptions about them, dimensional sensations, aesthetics, emotional feelings, possibly, hopefully, best case scenario, triggering somewhere over where the curiosity realm of my brain exists, and stimulating that part to illuminate those things even further. This session here had a couple different things. I'm attempting to do that, manipulate the barrier. But in this one, you'll see some lack of fusion comes through. The target was Clifford's Tower in York, England. This really old tower that it was built on top of an earthen mound. So they built this big mound, and then they built this tower on top of it. And so you'll see the lack of fusion in this session with the structure and lack of fusion, meaning that when elements of the target are coming into my awareness, I'm not sure how to piece them together, and so I'm piecing them together incorrectly. That's what lack of fusion is. Other aspects of the structure that are recognizable in the mounds, but the lack of fusion was that the two in the experience weren't connected. But also something to keep in mind is that in remote viewing, there's the idea of the aperture, and the idea is that when you begin the session, the aperture is very small, and as you progress through it, it widens, and that could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. That's a concept depending on the type of remote viewing. Ooh, look at that face. Or look at that face. Or 2 hours. Oh, jeez. Oh, boy. Okay, good enough. The aperture is an idea from Ingo Swann about and regarding being able to move into the complexity of a target. Or a location. That is kind of true. There are other I don't even want to say methods of remote viewing, but there are other ways to do this where it doesn't take that long. And although what I will say is, now it just depends on how it's being looked at. Because in controlled remote viewing, a la Ingo Swann, controlled remote viewing is how Ingo Swann perceived remote locations. And so when you're learning controlled remote viewing, you're learning how Ingo Swann went through the process of perceiving remote locations. There are people who do who can perceive remote locations in a different way than Ingo Swann did. Meaning that there are different ways of perceiving a location other than how it's learned in controlled remote viewing. So in controlled remote viewing, you go through the process of getting the extreme subtles and building and building and building and building into a picture. But there are other methods of remote viewing where you initially get the picture and then you move through into the conceptuals. So there's more than one way to do it, and even those two methods that I'm referring to here are only two baby steps, in my opinion, of how we can do this. The process itself is unfolding. There's no mastery style that is a one size fits all or the end all be all. The entire, because if you take away the labels and the personalities behind how remote viewing is presented, and the people and the methodologies, we're looking at the human ability to access, experience, and describe ranges of time and space, a range within time and space. And so, in my mind, as a continued evolution and unfolding of our ability to experience and perceive and describe ranges of time and space, you have to, you certain at some point you got to put everything off to the side and say, okay, this has got me to this step. Now I need to go to that step, you know. And if I have to chuck everything and move to that next step, I have to, and I have to. Because this process is an unfolding process. You know, so for me, my remote viewing is never ending in its evolution. I'll be continually evolving and not sticking in some methodology that may not necessarily be the way I experience things. You know, that's a big topic. Not to take anything away from the people who got us here. I have full 100% respect for the people that got us here. What I'm saying is that it's an unfolding process. The process isn't about anybody. It's not about anybody. It's about our what we can do and our unfolding capability. You know, it has nothing to do. It's not based on anybody. It's not held together by someone's personality. It's an unfolding process. So what I'm doing here in these little 12 to 15 minute explorations, I'm attempting to widen using those terms, widen that aperture quickly and get something very quickly. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there too. But what I'm doing is attempting to identify in a stronger way the limen or the barrier, and attempting to manipulate it or move it in a conscious way. I'm going to be able to consciously feel that force field is actually being moved or adjusted or manipulated or fluctuated in some way. So that's what this is about. That's where I'm going with this. So I hope you enjoy this video, and many more to come. And there's the target, and start going through the, thing here. Here's my lack of fusion.
Where are the voices?
My lack of fusion was the mounds. Here's the structure. Here's this area here, the door and the railings. But this is the lack of fusion. It was the mounds, because this is on a mound. So I had the two separate. This is what lack of fusion is. This is the lack of fusion. There's a mound of dirt, and there's a large structure with this crisscross thing on it, in the front of it. That's lack of fusion. Lack of fusion is very, very interesting. What else do we got here? I don't know if there's anything else that's too interesting. So that's what I wanted to go over today was the lemon. You know, there's a lot of words for it, a lot of terms for it, and I'm happy to throw as many at it as possible, because they're only labels to describe something, and what it's trying to describe, the electromagnetic force field within our brain that keeps our awareness right here, keeps it here. So I'm looking around, and there's the walls, and there's the computer, and this is my room, and this is, you know, blah 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 blah, and keeps it here, processing what's right in front of me. And in remote viewing, what we are doing is moving a piece of our awareness through the threshold or below the threshold into areas of our awareness that are not locked into our current situation. And in my opinion, the more we do that, it's not so much about making the threshold of awareness unstable, because maybe it keeps us sane. Who knows? Maybe it keeps our thoughts together. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not saying we don't need it. What I'm saying is that what we're attempting to do with remote viewing is being able to develop a relationship with it, to be able to go in and within and beyond it, and experience things, you know. So, and that's, it ain't easy. It ain't easy. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. There's a lot of unlearning and untraining, and a lot of exploration, and a lot of trial and error involved, just to be able to recognize that it exists and where it exists. I still have people commenting with all kinds of New Age philosophy that the threshold doesn't even exist, that it's just some thing we imagine. And all I have to do is imagine that it's not there, which is complete bullshit, because my answer to those types of comments is work 50 blind targets under completely blind conditions, and according to your theory, you should be able to nail those targets 100% every time. But they never will, because their theory is fantasy land. The threshold exists. It's what keeps us here as we're trying to get here. And right in between, this is what happens in between. This is a really good here and here, and this is in between. This is what came through the threshold right here. So those are my thoughts on the threshold. So thanks for subscribing, and many more to come.